Okay, guys, so this was Rollo's tweet, so I'm going to read it real quick for y'all. The quickest path to becoming a high-value man. Number 1, do not get married. Number 2, avoid family creation. Number 3, vasectomy in your 20s.
Oh!
Number 4, lift consistently.
Vasectomy.
Number 5, eliminate all sedations. Number 6, learn game and networking. Number 7, play to your strengths and build wealth. And then number 8, resist easing up on your focus. So I guess I'll turn it to Rollo. Do you want to?
Sure. Okay. So I think we have already established the fact that to be a high value man, we have a sort of a convention, at least somewhat of a conventional definition of that right now. Now, how long would it take the average guy to achieve what we would in some way say this is what makes you a high value guy? The it doesn't have to be the $120,000, but like the functional evaluated equivalent of that. I think it takes longer for men,
for sure,
to get to reach maturity and to reach a point of where they get their maximum, they can maximize their potential.
Well, let's stick to the science, because that's what he wanted. Number one, we had Richard Reeves on, and he talked about boys being 1 or 2 years behind women as far as development is concerned, and also from the book Dataclysm, men reaching their peak, their sexual peak around, or attractiveness peak around the age of 38 to 43, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
So that's science behind what you're saying. It would take longer for men.
But my point being is that, and I'll reiterate this one more time. The reason why I put this out there is because I watched you guys with Derek Moneyberg, and I think it was Brandon Carter. Who was on here. And Brandon Carter, I'm really impressed with Brandon Carter. I think he's funny. He's a great guy. But his sort of outlook on life is to maximize his efficiency, his potential. So it's, he doesn't go to the grocery store. He doesn't own a car. He doesn't, the things that would take him away from staying on his grind. I mean, to the extreme. And now this is an extreme that I would not do, clearly, because I have a wife of 27 years. I have a daughter of 25 years. I am who I am. I do what I do.
You have a car.
Right? So I have a car. Yeah, actually, I got 2 cars. I do have a car. So clearly, this is not about me. This is the most over the top, absurd, extreme example.
You also have a kid. I think we all should point
exactly.
that out.
So
who's Brandon Carter?
Who's Brandon Carter?
The guy you're talking about.
You don't know Brandon
You
Carter?
know Brandon Carter?
Really
You've been on the show with Brandon.
No. He said he has a kid.
He
Brandon
also has a kid.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand.
Sorry.
But the idea is that the most over the top, like, what are you willing to sacrifice to get to the point so that you can get to that state of being a high value male, right? So, by the way, when I'm putting out the idea of a vasectomy, okay, keep it coming, because I love that one. But if there was a male birth control pill, I probably would have put that in there as well, because what that one section in there was meant to say is that beware of, like, when the sperm leaves your body, you lose all power over paternity and children and everything else. That's one of the things that really slows guys down. It's a hindrance to becoming to getting up to becoming a high value guy. So family creation. I'm not saying you should do these things, but if you want to get to the quickest way to doing those things, because it takes longer for men to mature into their peak potential, then these are the sacrifices that you're going to have to make to get to it as fast as you possibly can.
I feel like Sneako is probably going to take off from this, because when I came into these spaces, this is kind of a question that I had, and I think I fought with Fresh and Fit, I think, a lot on our first couple episodes, trying to figure out, like, what are you guys advocating for? So when I would bring up, like, Andrew Tate tweets and Bugattis and all that shit, a lot of the times these two clowns would tell me, they'd say, oh, this stuff is just a proxy for success. You don't actually need the Bugatti. You need the ability to buy the Bugatti. You don't need to travel the world. You need to have freedom, and all these things. So
it's lucky we're moderating.
Yeah, man. So it seems like, it feels like
Lamborghinis.
It feels like, the goal initially wasn't to, like, be the richest motherfucker in the world. The goal was to have the freedom to basically do what you want.
Right.
And then I think the confusing part is, it feels like there's this kind of schism happening right now, or it's already started to happen in the Red Pill community, where you've got, like, the kind of trad people that are going in one direction, and then you've got, like, the grind set hustle culture that are going in the other direction. And it feels like the lightning point for this was your tweet, where it was like, okay, we're going to make it clear where we stand.
Yeah.
Get a fucking vasectomy, fuck family, and do this shit. And I think that it feels like the ultimate red pillar to you guys is what this is the feeling I have. The ultimate red pillar is a guy that grinds his fucking life away, and then at 35, he's, like, got fucking 15 million in the bank. He's fucked 50 girls, and now he's looking for, like, the best mom that he can find, who's like 20, 21 years old. He's going to get with that girl, 0-1 body count at the most, maybe 1, 0 at the best, right? Virgin girl gets with her, has a family, and then boom, that's like his life. Whereas it feels like on the kind of traditional side, it's like, well, What if you were like 24 and found a really good woman at 22, and then you had a family at 25, and you followed your career, she stayed at home, took care of the kids, and you followed that more traditional route. And your tweet, I think, really showed the division of people in terms of how they felt about which of the two lifestyles people were actually aiming for.
You got it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And then Sneako can...
Yeah, so what do you exactly do you believe in? Like, do you think that that is the life that you should follow? Because when you go to the red pill spaces, that's pretty much the end route, is because you're high value, you got a bunch of Lamborghinis, you're extremely rich. And we talk about competence when it comes to a high value man. Like I didn't have a rich dad growing up, and that didn't really hinder his competence. And in fact, in a lot of ways, being a father will help you become more competent because other people are dependent and you're responsible for them. So that will make you become a full, capable man, which is, I think, the most important part of life. It's the most important part of life is not having a bunch of hoes, not fucking 50 girls, or getting the most amount of money possible and just hustle grinding forever. The reason that we are here is to have a family, is to create. And so you see the red pill, and it's a response to feminism. You see this doomer way, like all these girls are hoes, all these girls on Instagram, they're all thoughts, whatever, they all belong to the streets. And so the reaction to that is the red pill, which is basically feminism, just male feminism. It's the same response. We make fun of girls who say that they want to freeze their eggs and wait till they're 35. And then men are giving the same advice to each other, saying, and I know you're not saying that's advice, but pretty much, like, if you look at the definition of advice, that's what that tweet was.
Yeah. So I think there's two things here. We specifically don't run around calling girls 304s. And like, I actually have a problem with it, because I hear you sometimes talk about the audience there. We have to separate the audience, almost like Christianity and the church. We have to separate the audience, because I agree with you. There's some shit that I see that people write on your streams as well, where I'm like, what the fuck is this, man? This is crazy, and I don't want to be associated with it. Red pill is not, and again, I'm red pill adjacent. Red pill is not something I get a union card for that I pay dues for. It's an ethereal thing that just sort of exists. Like, he calls it a praxeology. So the idea that, like, one of the things that's happened is every time, because he calls himself the godfather of it, when somebody does some stupid shit in the arena, then it's his fault. And then now we're going to punch his book. Cause now the thing is, it's just a cloud, but then there's a book. Okay. Now we have a physical thing to attack. And now Rollo has a tweet. Now we have a physical thing to attack. And so that's part of the issue, is that, like, now he's being held accountable for every, and I agree with you. Some of the things you hear are fucking idiotic.
Over the top. Yeah.
Right. Because here's an example. When we go over the psychological studies that show that men don't have the same, they don't necessarily cheat more because they have more higher body count, but women do. They tend to be unhappy in a relationship. There's the Institute for Family Studies study that we refer to all the time. That's not a validation for cheating. We're not suggesting men cheat. You said that in the response thing, that I definitely do not think men should cheat, because in that whole situation, you're still lying. That is a lack of integrity, regardless. But do men have the ability to have more sexual partners early on in life? I was 20 years old. I'm 45 now. I was 20 years old at once, and there was a point in my life where I was going to UT Austin, and I wanted to have sex with attractive women, and I didn't think about anything else except doing that. That's how my brain worked. And later on, did it affect me negatively? I don't think it did. I just don't think it had the same thing. So I don't think it's a rationale for that belief. But the thing is, what happens is, anytime something bad happens or somebody says something stupid, it just comes back. It's like, now all red pillars are saying this all the time, and I just don't agree with that.
I understand what you're saying here. So first, let me clarify one thing. So I understand.
Should we define the red pill?
I don't think that's going to take all night.
I think
next week.
Yeah. So I think the issue with Rollo's tweet, because for a lot of people it looks like advice, and for Rollo, he feels like it wasn't advice. I think the reality was, the disconnect is that that tweet was advice, but it was for advice to become a certain type of high value man that Rollo isn't saying everybody needs to become.
It said the quickest.
So, yeah, the quickest way to get to this part, it was the advice to do that, but he wasn't necessarily advising you to do that, right? It would be like him tweeting out, like, if you want to become the flattest person possible, jump off a cliff. And I say, well, is that advice to jump off a cliff? Well, if you want to be the flattest person possible, but you don't have to do this thing because you don't have to be the flattest person.
Statement.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, there's a few people who got it almost immediately. Hotep Jesus got it immediately. He did stream it. Jedediah Bila, while you were on with Jedediah, she got it immediately. She's like, I know Rollo. I know he's not like this. I know this is a troll. This is she understood
I mean, that could be true, but then I also saw
she's familiar with my background.
I also saw you tweet the next day, like, you were kind of making fun of the TradCon way of life, saying that you want to be at your funeral bed with a bunch of kids around. I was
saying
that you would rather be listening to metal in your car. That's how you want to go.
I was mocking the idea of this sort of pastoral kind of Norman Rockwell fantasy of dying on your bed with, like, as an old man, with surrounded by grandchildren and whatever, and like, as if that's like my funeral's going to beat your funeral,
right? As
if it's like
heavy metal in a car.
It's I put it this way: would you rather go out in a blaze of glory? Was it better to burn out than fade away? What would you rather?
I don't see heavy metal in your car as a blaze of glory. That seems
Okay,
Right, but it's subjective, isn't it?
Here's the thing: is it's over the top because I'm drawing attention to this fantasy of staying in your bed in an assisted living facility when 90% of people are never going to experience that. But it's a fantasy that we sell people so that we can sell them other ideologies.
I want to consider one other thing. You remember what he said earlier? He's like, one of the things you said was avoid family creation. Had I written that same tweet, what I would have said instead was be the one who chooses when and where you have kids, and don't let
control the birth.
Control the birth.
Wow, imagine that.
Well, I understand. Yeah, so
but
I understand.
The extreme example of that is a vasectomy. I would not have said vasectomy, but guess what? My tweet would not have gone viral. I wish I could say vasectomy on Twitter all day and go fucking viral. It's
That's
incredible.
the only thing they focused on.
So I understand what you're saying. That so. I would argue that you do pay dues to some extent to certain groups that you're a part of. So this is something that I noticed being relatively outside of groups myself. I kind of watch how people move through groups, and it seems like there very much is a kind of, there are a lot of groups that exist in these internet communities, and you get benefits for being part of the group because you kind of inherit audiences and cross-pollination from other people. And then there are sometimes shitty parts of being in the group. So for instance, if somebody says or does something crazy, well, now you're kind of on the hook for it because this motherfucker in your union just said some wild shit, and now you kind of have to go to bat for him. I think that something that I wholeheartedly disagree with is this idea that you can say like, well, you know, everybody in my comment section might say this, but I didn't say that, or I'm just making descriptions. Humans never just make descriptions. We never just observe things. The process of choosing to observe something already requires a decision to be made, right? When you go into a laboratory to study medicine, we're not just plugging random chemicals and random elements into a formula and see what happens. We're doing something to try to figure out like, well, what is going to help make humans healthier? What's going to be a good medication for treating a disease or whatever? That's typically what we do. So when we're analyzing like the red pill, it's not just a praxeology, I think you called it, because even I think in your first book you say like the goal is to make it so that your wife is not fucking the alpha, right? The reason why we observe things is so that we can take something useful from it and then go and do something with it. If I had an audience and I was making certain observations, and this has happened a lot, where I fight with a lot of black people, I notice my audience is getting a little bit racist. I fight with a lot of white people, I notice my audience is also getting a little racist. I fight with a bunch of women, they're starting to hate women, right? I notice that like if I do certain things, my audience definitely responds in certain ways, and your guys as well.
But you're not racist.
But
it
doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I think what matters is the impact you have on other people around you. Like if I go every day and I see my wife and I'm like, hey, what's up? And it's not at the end of like 6 months, she's like, you haven't told me that you think I'm pretty like a single time. Yeah. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, obviously I think you're pretty, my fucking wife. She's like, well, I need to hear it. I can't just say like, well, listen here, you stupid bitch. Obviously I think you're pretty. I don't have to say shit to you, motherfucker, right? I was like, okay, I have to understand how you feel. I've got to tell you that I think you're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I have to do that every day because that's part of like, what really matters at the end of the day is the impact you have on another person.
Should you be held accountable for the racist comments in your from your streamers?
Like directly, like you said them, no. But if you're fostering a certain type of audience, I think as leaders, which whether or not we want to believe it, to some extent we are, that's how we're treated, right? We're paid. When somebody gives you, like, we'll say on one end, well, I don't influence my audience. And then in the next breath, somebody will be like, I'll give you X $1,000 to promote a product. Why are you promoting a product? Because if I tell you to buy it, I know you will, right? So obviously we have influence over our audience. And if our audience is all heading in a certain direction, I think it's important to be like, hold on, guys. I see you guys are saying a lot of this shit. Maybe we need to pull it back. So when you say things about like avoiding family creation, you know, you might say like, well, I don't actually mean to avoid it. I just mean to choose when you have children. That might be the case, but broadly in the red pill speaking, I've seen this huge push where it's like, never fucking have kids, never get married, women are trying to steal your shit, child support, alimony, women are coming after you. And it's like, okay, well, combine that with the vasectomy advice or the, you know, control your birthing advice, and it makes the relationship seem very adversarial, like you are trying to avoid having kids at all costs. That's what it feels like, I guess, from the outside. And I think that's what a lot of the followers of red pill people in comment sections, I think that's the message they would carry forward.
I think the issue is then who's responsible? Because one of the issues, one thing we tried, Rollo and I tried, is our show, we try to have girls on there who have master's degrees. We try to have girls on there who do all different kinds of jobs. And when we do, we get the exact same response. When we had Miss Nevada on there, Miss Nevada, and they were like, yeah, she's a ran through fucking hoe. And I was like, what the fuck can we do?
We have women on there with master's degrees.
What can we fucking do? And so the thing is, while I agree with you, no matter what we do, this audience still exists and they still talk about it.
But why do they think that? What do they think that about these people?
The thing is,
because they want something to complain about. They want something to bitch and moan about.
Yeah, but they could complain about anything, right? They're choosing to complain about these particular subjects.
I also don't think commenters are the normal in the middle of the distribution. I think commenters are on the extreme ends of the distribution, which is why I personally don't feel super responsible for some of the idiotic things that they say. So I do understand what you're saying. Are we fostering an echo chamber? We specifically aren't. Well, like
people think we're soft on the girls because
constantly
we don't.
They think we are
because
so soft on the girls.
We're not like in their face too much because they're looking for blood. They're looking for something that's exhilarating. They're looking for Jerry Springer, you know.
But how many people do you think saw that tweet, and whether or not you call it advice, saw that and are now going to apply it? Especially because we talk about how important it is as leaders. You call yourself the godfather of the red pill. Like you kind of own this ideology, and it's like you are the forefront of it. So,
well, I
is
think
tweeting that a good idea?
I think I put the okay. First off, it was meant to provoke. That's number one, and it did. I got Matt Walsh, I got Ben Shapiro, I got Lauren Shannon. We wouldn't even be talking about this right now.
I don't have any of those people retweeting my shit. That's the only thing I'm saying. Like I retweeted vasectomy 5 times on Twitter.
And that, we're still talking about it 2 weeks later. It was success. It was a
Can we add in what Twitter's used for, by the way? And you yourself said so as well. You want to go viral, you got to say the most outlandish things. So Twitter,
I would say,
but if that was really the only reason, then you wouldn't have gotten that debate and got so emotional about everything that happened. You would have started. You called us fucking idiots. You called us douche. And also, if it was just in order to
because you weren't getting it, that's why.
Well, then you would have been rubbing your hands and be like, okay, I got the reaction I wanted. Here they are talking about it. Ben Shapiro, all these people are talking about it.
It's not your fault, but to be fair, he did a reaction video where he said he was married for 50 years. I'm a cokehead, and Justin Waller pays for prostitutes.
Damn.
So that to be fair, there was a little ad hominem attack on us. That you weren't part of it, but that's probably where some of this came from.
I would have taken that if I were you.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, because you would be here for it. You'd be fucking 2 hours late, Fred. Shut the fuck up.
By the way, I've never.
I'll do the moderator.
Thanks, moderator.
So going back, because so Sneako, you have some traditional conservative beliefs, so you disagree with the whole vasectomy part. What is the main, I guess, issue with it? Is it because of the lack of family creation? You think that's going to lead to
I think he thinks I'm influencing people, right?
the two branching paths that I set up,
So
like, what are you guys advocating for? Like, do you think if a guy could do it, if a guy could be 25 at the head of his career, starting right there, about to go down his life, but also pair up with a really good woman who he could have kids with, and then by the time he's in his 30s, he's already got like 7, 8, 9-year-old, a couple children with a good wife. Is that something you guys would push for? Or do you think that men should stay as far the fuck away from that as possible and wait till they hit those prime years of being like 35?
So the answer would be somewhere in the middle. I think it's how over time, because I think social media has ruined things so much. If you know the whole thing where we talk about 33% of men having 0 sexual partners, that hockey stick starts at the advent of the Facebook app on the iPhone in 2008. You can see it just shoot right up to where it was 12% of men or 16% of men with 0 sexual partners, and it got up to 33. So the thing is, what's happened now is I would say it's statistically less viable, not unviable, but less viable for the 24-year-old to marry the 21-year-old and feel good about it, because by the time she's 31 and he's 30, or she's 31 and he's 34, 35, the dynamics of his relationship are going to change. He's going to make more money. He's going to see the world differently. Now, I'm not advocating he leave his wife, but now those pressures existed where they didn't exist before 2008.
Sure. So so I would push back against this strongly. So here's something that I've noticed, okay? People ask me, so obviously I talk to a lot of women, I do my thing or whatever. When people ask me, like, what do you think is the best advice for like learning game? Okay. Honest to God, the best advice is when you're like 12 to 18, having friends that are girls. Talking to women, not being nervous around them, dating in high school.
You're not going to get any argument from this guy.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if you believe that or not. But honestly, that's the best time to do it. The second best time is now, right? But if you're not starting early and you're 25 and you've never even been shot down by a girl before, that's literally the scary. You could get a guy to climb the Empire State Building before asking a girl out.
So immersion from women, being around women
consistently. Yeah, and those warm spaces where dating and everything is possible, right? But the issue is when we push on this grind set shit so hard, and now you're getting a guy that's like 32, and he goes out on a date with a girl, and he wants to talk about like white papers for crypto coins. How the fuck is this guy going to be in a spot in his life where he's ready to like find a woman, settle down with a family? Like, how does he turn that on instantly?
The grind set guy doesn't mean you don't talk to women ever. It just means you're not looking to get married.
Well, one of those pieces of advice, like eliminate all sedations or whatever.
So what that means is like eliminate pornography, eliminate alcohol, eliminate prescription, opioids, whatever.
How do feminist women not fall under the category of sedations?
Feminist women.
Yeah, how do these women, how do hoes, for example, if you're talking about porn as a sedation, drugs and everything like that, can't you group hoes directly into the category of sedation?
You mean loose women or feminist women? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because you're not looking for anything further than that. It's just a way to get some dopamine release and just have a little bit of fun. It's pretty much equivalent to playing a video game or watching porn. It's not anything, like maybe you learn a little bit about hoes, but you're not going to get anything out of it.
I would say the difference is that it is far more difficult for guys to use that as a sedation than it is to say play World of Warcraft all day long, or it's to go drinking.
I don't know, man. I'd push back on that too. I think we all know guys. I think we all know guys.
You're in the gamer set. I got it.
Well, no. I'm saying I think for the girls set, I think we all know guys that have thrown their life away doing dumb girl shit. Whether you end up knocking somebody up, whether you get a crazy
half the reason shows like this exist is because guys aren't fucking getting laid. That's why. So
yeah, but I think Sneako brings up a really good point that when you say eliminate,
I think it's less of a I don't know, less significant than say some other forms of sedation. So when I'm talking about sedation in the tweet itself, people have I've said this a million times, is like, if you want to actually get up and actually become something and be something better, this is like where I finally get into like something like a positivity hustle, right? It doesn't matter if you learn all this stuff, you read all my books, you do all this shit. None of it matters if you can't get your ass out of bed. If your shitty real life is worse than your online escape life, that's what I'm talking about. That's the sedation right there. So could it be that you're a sex addict? Yeah, it can. But I would say those guys are probably far less common than the guys who are smoking weed, prescription drugs, pornography,
I would argue
whatever
that it's actually a worse sedation just based on the fact that you're saying get a vasectomy, because the consequences are much worse than any of the other sedations.
You're talking about sleeping around with a lot of women.
I mean, the consequences are much worse, obviously, because you're advocating for getting a vasectomy, because you could have a kid with this girl.
Right.
It's way more expensive. It's a bigger time suck. You're going to be drinking. You're going to be in environments that aren't going to be uplifting you whatsoever. You're in clubs all the time. You're around women that you don't really like. You get angry because you have to deal with, like, Myron always jokes about how he's going bald doing the show all the time because these women will suck away your soul. And really, what's the outcome of it? A nut? Is that really, like, how many times did you go and fuck a girl and you're like, that was really worth the last 2 weeks of my time of texting back and forth, taking her out on dates, spending all this money, getting dressed, listening to her stupid conversation about astrology? Like, is that really something worth advocating for? How is that a better sedation than weed, than porn, than video games?
I'm the wrong person to ask. I love women. I love fucking hanging out with them. I don't have the same opinion or whatever.
I mean, I love alcohol, but I quit. Like, there's a lot of things.
I've never drank before. That's the other thing. I've never tried Coke, by the way. That's the other thing. So I'm with you.
You're missing out, okay?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, sedations are great. I've done all the sedations.
Yeah.
I used to watch porn.
But here's the thing. Some people could say the gym is a sedation. The thing is, if you were going to rank the sedations, I would rather say a guy going out there and getting himself in shape, learning how to dress, learning how to talk to women, putting some bass in his voice, and actually going out and socializing with other people, getting over his fear of approaching women is a healthier sedation to me than pornography. That's just if we're going to rank sedations.
Well, and then I was going to say, like, other people are more addicted to a certain sedation than others are. If that is significant in your life and you're like, hey, you know what, I'm a sex addict, all I'm doing is going out and picking up random hoes all the time, and I've finally got it down to a science, and it becomes a problem, and it's like affecting other aspects of your life, then yeah, I would say that's a sedation that you need to like find, because it's an escape. I think sedations tend to be escapisms, is what I'm saying.
I think the contradiction that Sneako was pointing out is that, like, by definition, you're removing from the table all the women you would want to court for marriage because you're avoiding family creation.
Nobody courts them anymore.
Well, when I say court, I mean, like, you're dating to get like married, right? So you're removing all those girls. So the only ones left are the 304s, necessarily, if you're trying to focus on the grind set, but then also have fun with girls on the side. So then at that point, it seems like you're engaging in women the same way somebody would engage with like weed or whatever. You're not doing it for like
you can date a woman you want to have kids with and not have kids with her. Like, eventually have kids.
I mean,
at some point you will have
so
kids.
then the vasectomy thing doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
and also, it would depend on the ages too. Because if you're like,
I think it was hyperbole what he was saying.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think if like you're both in your early 20s and you're like, I don't think I want to have kids till I'm 35. That's a tough sell for a lot of women.
Unless you date someone who's younger.
Sneako, if there was a male form of birth control like Vasogel or something like that, and instead of saying vasectomy, and I said do this and take this, and it's not a permanent thing, you can always go back off of it.
No, because I think that's what we should be fighting when it comes to red pill and TradCon. That's like, it's a similar common enemy that's trying to sedate us in a way. Birth control for women, it messes up their hormones, it makes them extremely argumentative. They get weird, they get on different cycles. I don't advocate you to take these pills. I tell people all the time not to get the injection. Like, why would you go and listen to these pharmaceutical companies? Why would you let them win and go play into these games and pretty much just to chase dopamine? Then you're becoming a rat for these big companies, for big pharma, when you could just like actually have like, that's the point. That's the reason that sex exists, is to have children. Then you're completely removing the purpose of it, and then you're just chasing dopamine.
Can I chime in and just add something here real quick? So what
Moderators.
Yes, moderator.
Plan B?
What's up, moderator?
Moderators.
Two words, Plan B.
You know, here's the thing. While I agree with you now today at 45, I will tell you, like, I wasn't whore because nobody fucking liked me. But at 25, I wanted to have sex with pretty girls. That's what I did, and I don't feel like it ruined me. That's the only thing.
Well,
like,
so do I.
Yeah.
Like, every day, but there's better things to do with your time and with that sexual energy.
Let me
Like,
ask you
you can
something.
focus that into becoming better. Into
Do you not think at all, though, that period of time helped you understand women better?
I'm 24. I'm still
learning
now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will tell you at 45, and I used to work in nightlife, and I used to, be a military officer, a bunch of different jobs. And I will tell you that, like, the value that I gained from having so many women in my life, not necessarily just for sex, but my ability to communicate with them now is 100. Like, I do the red carpets for all these different parties, and I bring 100 girls to Bulgarian's house. Like, that's what I do now because I'm good at doing that now. I look back at that and I say that was a good experience for me. It didn't necessarily have to have sex with all of them, but I do understand what you're saying. The problem is where I differ from you and maybe from Myron is like, I don't hate being around them. I actually fucking really like being around some of them. They're fun, they're crazy, and they're just fun to be around. I just don't want to marry them. You understand what I'm saying? Like that's the difference for me. It's like Juicy J says, I still love these hoes. They're for everybody, but I love them anyway. That's the way I look at it. I mean, maybe it's just a little different.
Yeah,
the way
you see them purely as entertainment, but I think it's better to see.
But I
them.
don't hate them either. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, but you're not really. It's better to see them as people.
Yeah, that's how I see them. Exactly.
You're seeing them as entertainment.
Well,
No,
no,
I
I think
don't.
the difference he's trying to point out is that you made it sound like because you said like 2 weeks of texting this bitch to get to the payoff of sex. He sounds like he enjoys the texting.
I fucking loved all
Yeah,
of it.
which I do too, right? It's fun
Because
to,
for
like,
me,
hang out
I
with women, yeah.
was in a stage of abundance, and also my lifestyle is a little different. It's big parties that we go to, huge events,
Which is just a bigger, grander sedation. That's no different than really watching
I think
porn
it's
or playing video
networking though.
games.
Like I've met some incredible. I wouldn't be sitting here right now had I not done that. It was Andrew Tate who reached out to me, introduced me to Justin Waller, who introduced me to him, and that's how I introduced Myron. So I don't see it that way. I see it as a goal, an ends to a means, and also the other thing is, and dude. Walt will tell you this too. Having beautiful women around you is one of the most incredible networking techniques that exists.
That's true.
There's an incredible book by Professor Ashley Mears at Boston University, where she talks about the guys who go to the Hamptons, and the ticket to get into every party at every Hamptons house with all the billionaires was to have girls.
Right.
So that's why
Of course, that's going to lead you to a fun life.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Adam22 recently, and he has his own porn thing too. I don't know if he was allowed to
plug talk.
Yeah, he has plug talk and everything like that. I was recently talking to him because he's been posting a lot of pictures of his daughter and stuff like that. And I always like react to them like, that's dope. Like he clearly cares about being a good father. And I had this conversation with him, and he said that after being with 400 women, doing all this show, like I asked him, like, was it really worth it all? He's like, there's nothing better than having kids. Yeah. And even that's coming from a guy who's clearly been a sex addict, who did all this stuff. He went on my stream and he was talking about all these crazy threesomes, and he's like, very public about all this stuff. And he's saying there's nothing better than having a family and having a kid. Even this guy that's like slept with all the girls, like everybody in the chat, you watch like the top porn stars, he's been with them. And that does not compare to having a family. So yes, okay, Dan was
does he regret it? Does he regret?
Yeah, because one thing could be better than something else, but it's still really fun, right?
It's not about regret. It's about advocating what's best for the young male audience and for the future generation. So is it better to advocate towards vasectomy so you can go to Dan Bilzerian parties, or better to advocate like become competent men, raise a good family, have strong children, and then your life is going to be, that's the best life.
I think it's a great life. I don't know if it's the only good life. I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to have children. I think we've seen it all the time, and they're happy. The thing is, if I were to look at it from the book of Leviticus or the book of Genesis, or if I were to look at it from the Quran, you're right. That's not a great life. But I think for other people, they can enjoy life without.
The only people that don't want to have kids have been psyoped by the bigger agenda to believe that climate change and all these other external factors, that's the reason they don't want to have kids. It's all a lie. That's the reason we're here, is to procreate. That's all animals. You're like an evolutionary.
Let me ask you this. Let's take it to the next level. Let's say you're married, okay? You found the one. You're with your girl, right? Is having sex with her without procreation, is that also an escape? Is that now a sedation? If you're not doing it to specifically have children, is it then a drug addiction?
Right, but then it becomes a unity between a mother and a father.
So how is that not an escape, though?
Because it's still always
you're enjoying it, though, and it's not procreation, though.
Right, but there's always the risk of procreation. Like, that's the point that you do it. There's always the possibility that
would you use birth control with your wife if you didn't want to have kids?
No, I would never get my wife on birth control. Absolutely not.
No, I think condom. He's including condoms.
Yourself.
Any kind of birth control. Any kind of
Vasogel, condom, whatever. Any kind of
Sure, it is a form of escapism to some extent, but it's better than spending your time with a bunch of women that you don't respect or like, or even consider as really people.
Okay,
just as like entertainment.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because I hear this quite a bit these days. Is like the most extreme end? I'm not saying like Islam, but like a lot of these really super Orthodox Christian guys will say that any sex that is not for procreation is a drug addict, is drug addiction, or it's haram, right? Anytime you're doing something to feel good, it's a dopamine release. Any kind of is any dopamine good?
I think between a husband and wife, then it's not just dopamine. It's something that you're connecting and you're establishing a relationship that's bigger. If you just do it with these hoes, like, you know that it's a one-time thing, you're thinking this dumb hoe, and then you're just going to kick her out. You're already thinking about it.
But we're talking about sedation at this point, so.
Yeah, but that's a sedation. That's a different level. Like, that's not a waste of time sedation. You're bonding with the partner. There's something that you're gonna create a future with this person. You're gonna see her the next day.
Maybe another way to say it is you're of one flesh now, like what it says in the Bible. And
to steal Sneako's point here, and I understand what he's saying. I think one of the problems that we've ran into in society, and I think even Red Pill hits on this a little bit, is we become a society that has like taken every pleasure and reduced it down to its instantaneous like click button to get it, basically, right? So instead of reading a book, we browse TikTok. Instead of going to the theater and actually watching a movie, we're at home with a movie playing, Subway servers in the background, and like a game going at the same time, right? We have no ability to have attention or focus on anything. We've taken all of our pleasure centers and we've short-circuited them into the most immediate gratifying way possible. Now, that doesn't mean that all of those pleasure centers are necessarily bad. And I think from a religious perspective, when you look at how society is structured, ultimately society is kind of stemming from the structure of mother, father, children. And anything that's done in service of the maintenance of that structure is necessarily a good thing. So when you like ask Sneako, like, well, is it sedation to fuck your wife? Well, no, because sex there, even though that's the same kind of, it's the same act as having sex with a stranger, that's being done in service of unifying and strengthening the bond between father and mother that's ultimately serving as the foundation for all of society. Much the same way that nobody's going to give me props if I go to the park and play with random kids. But if I go to the park and I play with my son, people are like, oh, well, that's a really good thing to do.
You play with random kids, you might go to jail.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, but you're still like, you're either playing with kids or you're playing with your son, right? But it's important to do with your family because you're doing it in service of that bond of like father-son and building the family. Same thing with sex between a mother and father. Sex between a mother and father is not the same thing as random sex because that's being done in service of fortifying this institution that ultimately all of society is built upon. So I think that's the difference.
And the Red Pill advice is 50 women. So the whole purpose is just to get this.
I think it's Myron's specific advice.
Okay, but like one of the forefronts of the Red Pill, just get this done. It's like getting a notch it on your belt. You're you're going through the motion specifically. It's like doing reps and that you're treating a person like you're just getting reps done.
Yeah.
That's not that is dopamine release in its purest form. You're not trying to establish anything. The whole point is to never see her again.
Myron, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think Myron's not saying that for dopamine release. He's saying that for experience so that you don't get used by women. I think one of the things, the whole point
well,
of
that's why I'm equating that sex to being a waste of time.
I think if you gain some experience, and you had made the point before, is like, oh, is this going to you're going to fuck this girl and be able to tell if she's a good mom? No, but what you're going to be able to do is see the red flags before they come. You go on a date with a girl you find really attractive and she will not shut up about her ex. That's probably a good red flag. But after you've done this a few times, doesn't have to be 50 times, but after you've done this a few times, you start to see these red flags before they occur and you're smarter and you can help your friends out with those things. That's the only reason why I would say that.
A little bit, although I would fight on some of that advice because like you can, and like you said something earlier about how the casual dating and shit that you did in your early years probably helped you with dating later on. Yeah. It sounds like, based on what I hear you say, that's probably true for you. But I think we could both agree there are ways that you can do it that wouldn't help you at all, right? If you go onto Tinder, you find a girl, you dinner, fuck her, never talk to her again, you could do that 50 times and arguably have less experience than a guy that's dated one woman for 7 years, right? Just because you've never even learned.
Experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like fucking 50 women could give you a lot of insight potentially into the female psyche, I guess, if you actually spend any time with them and date them. But if it's literally just one night stand, like I don't know if you really learned anything, right?
Well, see, here's the thing though. The average North American male has had, is it seven sexual partners, six sexual partners?
7 to 9, yeah.
So for him to say 50, I think that sort of is going to include that necessary experience, right? And we can debate on how worthy that experience is. I will tell you at 45, I've learned a lot about women from being around women, not necessarily just having sex with them.
I want to address like your point as well, because I hear what you're saying, because a lot of people will take the quote unquote red pill to its most logical extreme, right? So just fuck a bunch of girls. That's all it's about, right? When my very first book, there's 6 chapters in there. It's called Plate Theory. Okay. Each one of those, like when we're spinning plates, it's like you're dating non-exclusively. And if you read those rather than just listen to what's going on online, you'll notice that the last chapter in there is transitioning out of the plate spinning, the dating non-exclusively into something that is more monogamous at that point. But that gets thrown to the wayside because nobody reads anymore, obviously. But the fact of the matter is I think that with this, another thing that comes back on me is people say, well, Rollo just says fuck anything on 2 legs. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, in the book itself, I say, you know what? Just because you're spinning plates doesn't mean you're fucking every single one of those plates. There are possibilities. For some of them, maybe you are. For some of them, maybe you're not. But you're dating non-exclusively. And so the idea behind that is not to get your notch count up or not to validate your ego for whatever reason. It's so that you understand so you know what you want in a woman and so you know what you don't want in a woman. Whether you fuck that woman in the first place is irrelevant. Some guys are going to do that, obviously. But I think the idea, and I've been struggling with this since the very early days when I was a moderator on the SoSwap boards, is that I think a lot of people think that it's conditioning guys or it's teaching guys to be like jerks, to be like womanizing sons of bitches. And I would say that most guys who come into the red pill are not looking to be like players. They're not looking to be guys who want to go and just like bang up as many women
Just
as
the
they
majority of the
possibly can.
commenters.
Maybe that's true. But the fact is that most of the guys, at least in my experience from working with these guys in the last 20 years, they want one chick. They want to actually kiss a girl. They're like 24, 25, in some cases 30 years old, and they've never gotten anywhere. They've never had any intimacy, never had any kind of affection. And I'm not like, sex is even out of the question. Just to have a girlfriend is why they're like, what they have been doing up to this point hasn't been working for them. So that's why they come in and they find this. Are there guys who can use the red pill so that they can go and spin plates and they can get a rotation? Absolutely. Are there guys who can use the red pill to find a wife? Absolutely. That's the beauty of the red pill. It's like I said before, it's like fire. You can use it to cook your food, and you can use it to heat your home, or you can use it to set your house on fire and set your neighbor's house on fire. It just depends on the application.
But you're acting like it's this really deep philosophy or praxeology. Like, is it really that complicated? Like, what if you could just describe
yes,
getting experience with women? I think
it is that complicated.
How is it that complicated?
Or actually, or even on the back of that, how does it work then that you guys, I'm grouping all of you together. Maybe it's just Myron.
I'm just here moderating.
Yeah. Because it seems like then, because I would personally, I feel like I would consider the ultimate success red pill story then would be somebody like Ben Shapiro. But it feels like you guys really disagree. So how do you reconcile those two things? Because he's somebody who found a wife early on, got married, has a business, has a family, seems like he's doing everything right, unless we really are saying, but he didn't fuck enough women. So how do you reconcile that?
So if it works out for him, so it's like this, what was it? Rich Cooper, who says, hey, don't ever date a single mother, right? If someone comes up to Rich Cooper and is like, hey, listen, I know what your advice was, but I just want to let you know, I'm dating a single mom and it's worked out for me. We've been together for 10 years. Rich Cooper's not going to go, fuck you, stupid motherfucker. Why didn't you listen to me? He's going to go, hey, congrats, man. It worked out for you. That's how I would look at Ben Shapiro. Marrying the first woman you had sex with is not unviable, but it's slightly, it's out there 2 standard deviations away from the norm. Today, not in 1850, that was the norm. Today, I think it's difficult. Now, here's the thing: if we look at Steven Crowder's situation, what I'll say about this, I think Steven Crowder I disagree with him. I think he is a high status man. The difference,
I think so too.
the difference with Steven Crowder is, I would say that most of us in here and most of this audience, realizing you got married in the state of Texas, made that much money, and didn't sign a prenup, that was not a smart move on his part. In fact, I would even go so far, and you might disagree with me on this, if he had signed a prenup, she wouldn't be filing for divorce.
That never would have been occurred to them, though, because they're both like from evangelical cultures, and they're both like virgins, and they're like in their early
sure,
mid-20s.
But then again, look at the divergence here from the traditional versus the red pill, right? Where the red pill is like, you need to be going into this marriage waiting for it to fail, get that prenup, do all this, like
protecting yourself.
Sure, but I mean, like, I would argue, Sneako is our Muslim expert. I won't touch your book, sorry. But like, wouldn't you argue that going into marriage is literally, again, like the union of flesh, till death do us part, et cetera? That if you're going in with the prenup, you're basically like doing with your fingers crossed behind your back.
So you wouldn't go in with a prenup?
Well, I personally wouldn't. I don't know if I would suggest that for other people, but I'm pointing out the difference between like the trad versus the red pill, where there's this huge schism right now in terms of advice.
So do you remember the science thing? So if 70 to 80% of divorces are initiated by women, then it would de-incentivize women to get a divorce if there was a prenup. That's just scientifically the way I'm looking at it. Nobody gets into, again, 38% of businesses stay in business after 5 years, something like that. Nobody starts a business, but hey man, 38% chance we're going to fucking make it. But if you get married, hey, you know what? There's a 53% chance that we're going to get divorced. Nobody says that. Everyone has. So, but why not protect ourselves? I have home insurance, but I don't intend on burning down my house, and I have car insurance, but I don't intend on totaling my car. I think you can still be prepared. Maybe this is the military officer in me. All we do is practice emergency procedures, but we don't intend on crashing. And so that's why I would do that.
I mean, I agree with you insofar as business and insurance goes. It feels a little bit different. It feels a little bit different when you're talking about marriage, because it's not necessarily just a financial union. It is realistically part of it is a financial union.
That's the origin of marriage was a financial union.
Well, probably, but it also had to do with like family creation, everything too, right? Heavily played into it. Probably more important even than the financial union was the family creation part. It just, again, it feels like I'm feeling the rift between like date to find a wife to create a family versus date. This 3 or 4 might divorce you, get a prenup, get ready to, she's 15 years younger than you. It seems like there's that big divergence of qualities around the marriage part. I'm curious for both of you, you guys can answer. Like Sneako, what is like your ideal path in life? If you could be like striving towards an ideal, when does the man get married and have a family? And then you two, like when do you think a man should get married and have a family? Like in general, knowing that there's going to be exceptions, but in the Western world.
We can go to Sneako first.
I would say late 20s to early 30s. And a part of the reason why I reverted to Islam is I see it as the only logical way to get around the the boredom aspect that the Red Pill talks about, because men always get bored. Men always want variety, and there's an ethical way to do it. See, if you have multiple wives, then you're not just spending time with these girls knowing that you're going to go never see them again and you're just using them for a body count. If you have multiple wives and you love them equally and you're providing for them and they're getting something out of it, and then you get past that variety problem that a lot of guys have, and you also the women are going to act more in your favor if they're in a sense competing with one another to make sure that they're providing for the husband.
How do you handle this legally? I mean, bigamy is
I would not get married legally. I don't recommend anybody in the West get married. I think we've seen it fail over and over again. I just don't think, but I would get
family
married.
creation without legal marriage.
But you can get married religiously.
Yeah,
you can have the ceremony. I think a lot of girls would like to have the ceremony. They want to get the dress with the pictures in the ring, but they don't need to have the actual contract. And I think for a lot of guys that if they would just logically explain that to their woman, they would have to agree. Just look at all the failed marriages. You look at the divorce rate.
Well, let me caveat that.
Do you guys agree with that? When guys should get married? To summarize, late 20s, 30s?
I've already actually put that in my book. So it's like don't even consider monogamy until you're 30 years old.
You would agree with that?
At least 30, man.
Okay,
I would say at least 30.
Right.
Yeah.
So y'all are in agreement about when they should get married.
Yeah,
I guess they might say spend some plates in the process to do so. You're saying minimize that.
I mean, I would argue from a trad spot. I think you would argue for earlier than 30, right? Because you want to have children to have fun with when you're in your vibrant stages in life. Like having a teenager.
We're pretty vibrant.
Mid to late 20s, early 30s. It depends for a lot of people.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we say 30s. Like if you have a kid when you're like,
we're pretty vibrant.
No, I understand. But like when you have a kid when you're like 35, 36, and now they're in their teenagers years, and you're like in your 50s, right? Okay. It's not necessarily the same type of vibe as you have a kid.
Clarify, so Sneako, you're against guys spinning plates and/or having premarital sex with girls prior to obviously the relationship.
I just see it as a waste of time to just be spending your time with hoes and saying that that's not a sedation. Okay. Like that's the one component that the Red Pill's missing, is that they see it as experiences. You're getting better. It's part of being a high value man, is having a huge body count. I see that as actually a worse sedation than porn, than video games, and all this other thing, because not only is it just going to waste your time, but the risk factor is extremely high. And the solution that is offered to become this high value man that the Red Pill talks about is getting a vasectomy, which is not even the quickest solution, because
again, hyperbole, but
yes, hyperbole. He wasn't. So the thing is, you guys remember the story of the Buddha, right? He goes off and he's a prince. He's an Indian prince, and he's never seen a dead person. He's never seen a sick person. He goes out for the first time and he sees the sick, the poor, the dead. He comes back and he freaks out, and he finds enlightenment under the lotus tree, and he tells everyone to get rid of all of your personal possessions and all this kind of stuff. But it's really easy to say that when he had a fucking harem before he said it. When you interviewed Bilzerian, he's like, oh, having sex with all these girls isn't that big of a deal. It's really easy to say that after you had sex with all those girls. If we say this, Sneako, to other dudes, they're going to sit there and listen to us and be like, hey, let me fuck these girls real quick first, and then let me learn this lesson on my own. That's the problem.
Yeah, men learn from experience.
For sure. I will tell you, you are 100% right. It was a sedation for me, and I fucking enjoyed it. I'll tell you that also. So that's the problem. The thing is, while we say that, and I agree with what you're saying, and I think you're setting a good example, the problem is men are still men. Men are always going to be more interested in casual sex than women are. The 37 culture study done by Dr. David Bussin, all 37 cultures, men were more interested in casual sex than women are.
That's true. But then you have to think about, like, because we all have a platform, like, what's the best advice to give out to the masses? Because if you're saying
statistics is the best advice. The truth is the only thing that I care about. I don't amoral, like you said before, because the problem is that the Overton window consistently shifts to the left. And no matter how much I, as a Christian, want it to go back to the right, I know that unless, other than I can think of maybe Afghanistan recently in 1979 in Iran, I can't think of a single society that shifted back to the right in the last 50 years.
But then you're creating a bunch of men that are victims to that system and that are just playing parts of this leftist system instead of trying to create people.
I don't think it's leftist, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
I think you also have to be careful. Our advice can't be statistics, because I feel like one of the things you argue against as red pillars is just being a statistic, right? Like you could argue if you're listening to your man, you should kill yourself, because statistically speaking, men kill themselves more than women, but that's not a good argument, right? Like in some senses,
you have to give a prescription, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't want to just be a statistic, right? Because statistically speaking, what percentage of marriages end in divorce? What percentage of women initiate divorce? Right? You want to try to find a way to rise above, right?
I guess maybe a better way would be like, here's my prescription, but they come with the statistics, and this is the reason why. And none of them are based on my feelings. They're always going to be based on other statistics. So I would say, for instance, if I were to say 78% of divorces are initiated by women, that would be my prescription would then be to get a prenup. But it's based on that statistic.
Yeah, for sure. But it could also be like, well, here are the most common reasons for divorce. Try to remedy these before they become an issue.
That's another great statistic, though. You're
sure,
bringing
yeah,
a statistic for a prescription.
But the feeling is, what do we express at the end of the day, right? It's the difference between history and historiography, right? If we want to tell the story of World War II, we're not going to talk about every single soldier in the war. We're going to focus on, you know, the leaders. We're going to focus on the big battles. Same thing with statistics, right? It's what is it? Statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. You can arguably use statistics to tell almost any kind of story you want, depending on how you massage your numbers and depending on what side you present. But it's our choice to choose what we want to present to the people, which is what we tell them to do. Also, one thing I would say on the marriage stuff, because I hear this a lot. I don't know how many of you guys talk about this or get into this a lot. You have to be really careful with the live with a woman but never get married. One, is because some states have something called common law marriage, which I hope most of you guys are familiar with, right? So you might not think you're married.
I don't believe has it, but yes.
I think Texas.
No, Texas does. I'm sorry, Nevada doesn't have it. You're right.
Be very careful with that, because you might find you're getting a divorce notice from a woman you never agreed to marry. So one, be careful with the common law thing. And then two, I do believe that one of the reasons, we don't have to get too deep into the divorce stuff because I might come later, but one of the reasons women probably want some sort of like formal contract is because, you know, while there might be some love and children, all of that, there is also money and career being left on the table too, depending on the arrangement. If you're telling a woman like, hey, we're going to fuck, we're going to have kids, and I love you and I love that and I love our family, you're going to stay here and take care of the kids while I go and I continue my career. When we split, if we get divorced in 10 years, I didn't lose shit financially. Because my career has been fine. I've been working the entire time. And now you're stuck being a full-time caregiver. You might have given up your career to do it. So I think it's reasonable for the woman to say, much the same that a man might say, I want a prenup, you know, just because we get divorced and you're taking half my shit. The woman could also be like, okay, I understand that. But if we end up getting divorced and I'm throwing away a decade of my life to take care of your fucking children, our children, I want some kind of financial assurance too. I think that's fair.
And you're aware that certain prenups are thrown out exactly for the reason you just said.
Depending on how egregious they are or the state of the people writing them, or if both sides had representation, there's a lot of, some prenups do get thrown out, but not all of them, right? Yeah.